Chapter 3. Melissa. Having settled on a plan, Steve felt a sense of direction at last. His anxiety, wandering, and unrest all shrank back into a corner. Only then did he find the mood to closely examine the fragmented memories left by Klein. Steve stood up out of habit, turned off the valve, and watched as the wall lamp slowly dimmed until it went out. Then he sat back down, unconsciously fingering the brass cylinder of his revolver, pressing his temple, silently relishing in the crimson-tinged darkness like the most focused audience in a cinema. Perhaps due to the bullet's passage, Klein's memories were like shattered glass, not only lacking coherence but also significantly missing content. Questions like where the exquisitely made revolver came from, whether it was suicide or homicide, what the notebook's phrase, "everyone will die, including me," truly meant, and whether he was involved in anything strange in the 2 days before the incident. Not just these specific recollections had become fragmented and incomplete, but so had his knowledge. From his current state, Steve believed that if Klein were to return to university now, he probably wouldn't graduate, even though he had only left the campus a few days ago and had not slackened in his own standards. 2 days later, I have to attend an interview with the history department at Tingen University. The universities in the Kingdom of Lowen have a tradition of graduates not staying on as faculty. My mentor gave me one recommendation letter for Tingen University, and one for Beckland University. Amidst Steve's silent viewing, the red moon outside the window gradually sank to the west until a hint of light rose in the east, and the horizon was dyed gold. At this moment, noises came from inside the room, and soon, footsteps approached the partition door. "Melissa is awake. She really is as punctual as ever," Steve murmured with a slight smile, feeling a sibling-like fondness for Melissa under the influence of Klein's memories. "However, I don't have a younger sister," he immediately quipped to himself. Unlike Benson and Klein, Melissa's primary education wasn't completed at the Church of the Night Goddesses Sunday School. By the time she was of age to attend school, the Kingdom of Lowen had enacted the Elementary Education Act, establishing the Committee for Lower and Middle Education and specifically providing funding to increase investment. In just 3 years, on the premise of incorporating many church schools, numerous public primary schools were established, strictly maintaining the principle of religious neutrality, avoiding entanglement in the disputes among the Church of the Evernight Goddess, the Church of the Storm, and the Church of Steam and Machinery. Compared to the Sunday school, which only cost a copper penny a week, the public primary school's 3-penny weekly tuition seemed quite expensive. However, the former only taught 1 day a week, while the latter taught 6 days a week, making it, in effect, low-priced to nearly free. Melissa, unlike most girls, was fascinated by gears, springs, bearings, and other such things from a young age and aspired to become a steam mechanic. Benson, who had suffered from a lack of education himself and understood the importance of education, supported his sister's dream just as he supported Klein's university education, especially since Tingen Technical School was considered a middle-level education, eliminating the need for further preparation in a grammar school or public school. Last July, at 15, Melissa passed the entrance exam and became a member of the Steam and Machinery department at Tingen Technical School, with her weekly tuition raised to 9 pennies. Meanwhile, the import and export company where Benson worked was significantly affected by the situation in the South Continent. Both profits and business volume had shrunk dramatically, forcing the company to lay off more than 1/3 of its employees. To keep his job and maintain their livelihood, Benson had to accept even more burdensome tasks, often working overtime or traveling to harsh environments, as he had for the past few days. Klein had considered helping his brother with the financial burden, but as someone born a commoner and admitted to a common grammar school, he felt acutely aware of his inadequacies upon entering university. For example, ancient Fossack language, a fundamental language for the nobility and wealthy classes' children, was something they had been learning from a young age, whereas he was only exposed to it in university. There were many similar aspects in which Klein had to use all his effort, often staying up late and waking up early, just to barely keep up with others and graduate with average grades. Memories of his brother and sister flashed through Steve's mind until the doorknob turned and the door inside the room creaked open. He suddenly snapped back to reality, reminded that he was holding a revolver in his hand. This is a partially controlled item. It could scare the children. And there's also the wound on my head. Seeing Melissa about to come out, Steve hurriedly pressed his temple while hastily opening the desk drawer and tossing the revolver inside, causing a loud thud. What happened? Melissa looked over in confusion. Hearing the noise, she was in the prime of her youth, and even though they couldn't afford much good food, leaving her face thin and somewhat pale, her skin still radiated the glow of a young girl. Seeing his sister's brown eyes inquiringly looking at him, Steve feigned calmness, picked up something close at hand, and smoothly closed the drawer, concealing the existence of the revolver. The sensation at his temple confirmed that the wound had healed. He had taken out a silver pocket watch with vine and leaf patterns engraved on it from the drawer. A light press at the top popped the cover open. It was the most valuable item left by their father, a former Royal Army sergeant. However, second-hand goods are still second-hand goods, and despite having been repaired by a clockmaker in recent years, it still had issues. Embarrassing Benson, who liked to wear it to elevate his status, leading him to leave it at home. Interestingly, Melissa might genuinely have a talent for mechanics. After grasping the theoretical knowledge, she began to tinker with the pocket watch using the tools at the technical school and recently claimed to have fixed it. Steve watched the cover pop open, saw the second hand motionless, and instinctively turned the top, attempting to wind the watch. However, after turning it a few times, there was no sound of the mainspring tightening, and the second hand remained still. It seems to be broken again, he said casually. Looking at his sister, Melissa glanced at him expressionlessly, quickly came over, and took the watch from him. She stood still, pulled up the watch's top button, and merely turned it a few times before the ticking sound of the second hand moving could be heard. Normally, pulling it up should adjust the time. Right. Steve's expression instantly became blank. Just then, the distant church bells tolled, ringing 6 times. Long and ethereal. Melissa listened to the bells, then pulled the watch's top button up further and twisted it continuously, setting the time correctly. Done, she said tersely and without emotion. Then pressed the top button back down and handed the watch back to Steve. Steve smiled awkwardly but politely. Melissa gave her brother another deep look, turned towards the cabinet to grab her toothbrush and towel, and left for the communal bathroom. Did her expression just now seem like a mix of disdain and helplessness? Quote, looking at her intellectually challenged brother with care? Quote, Steve shook his head and chuckled softly, clicking the watch cover shut and then popping it open again. Repeating this action, his thoughts drifted to a question. Without a silencer, Klein's suicide, well, let's assume it's suicide for now, would have made quite a noise. Yet, Melissa, just a wall away, seemed utterly unaware. Was she sleeping too soundly? Or was there something inherently strange about Klein's suicide? Click. Open. Clack. Shut. When Melissa returned from washing up, she saw her brother continuously opening and closing the watch cover. Her gaze filled with helplessness again as she sweetly said, Klein, Take out the rest of the bread. Remember to buy new ones today. Along with meat and peas. You have an interview soon. I'll make you peas stewed with lamb." As she spoke, she moved the stove from the corner, lit a fire with the remaining coal, and started boiling a pot of water. Before the water boiled, she opened the bottom drawer of the cabinet and carefully took out a can of inferior tea leaves, sprinkling about 10 leaves into the pot, pretending it was real tea. Pouring 2 large cups, Melissa and Steve shared 2 rye bread slices with the tea. The bread, free from sawdust and excessive bran, was still unpalatable. Steve, weak and hungry, forced himself to swallow the bread with the help of the tea. A few minutes later, after Melissa finished eating, she tidied her hair, which hung down to her waistcoat, and looked at Steve. "Remember to buy new bread. Just 8 pounds. It's hot, and too much will spoil easily. And don't forget the lamb and peas." Quote. So, she's really taking care of her bookish brother. Even emphasizing it again. Steve nodded with a smile. Okay. Regarding the weight in the Kingdom of Lowen, Steve, based on Klein's memory and his own comparison, thought it was close to the pound he was accustomed to, which is about 0.5 kilograms. Melissa didn't say more, stood up to tidy up, packed the last piece of bread for lunch, put on her mother's old hat, grabbed her homemade bag for books and stationery, and prepared to leave. Today wasn't Sunday, so she had a full day of classes ahead. It took about 50 minutes to walk from their apartment to Tingen Technical School. There were public horse carriages charging 1 penny per kilometer, with a city-wide cap of 4 pennies and a suburban cap of 6 pennies. To save money, Melissa always left early and walked. Just as she opened the door, she paused, half-turned, and said, "Klein, don't buy too much lamb and peas. Benson might not return until Sunday. And remember, only 8 pounds of bread." Okay, Steve replied, a bit helplessly. At the same time, he mentally repeated the word, Sunday, several times. In the northern continent, a year was also divided into 12 months, with each year ranging from 365 to 366 days. And a week still had 7 days. The former is a result of astronomical achievements, making Steve suspect this was a parallel world, while the latter stemmed from religion. In the northern continent, there were 7 orthodox deities: the Evernight Goddess, the Lord of Storms, the God of Knowledge and Wisdom, the Earth Mother, the War God, and the God of Steam and Machinery. Watching his sister close the door and leave, Steve sighed deeply, then quickly focused his thoughts on the transference ceremony. "Sorry, I really want to go home."